In this world, every person will turn into the last animal they ate. Some people ate delicious duck necks and turned into mice, united under the rat ring. Others ate braised chicken takeout and became a chicken that can sing, dance, and rap. Even worse, some ate soup made from fossils and instantly turned into a dinosaur, wreaking havoc. But you alone bit down on your own arm and actually turned into a Chinese divine dragon. Because humans recklessly destroyed the environment, the will of the earth issued a warning. Everyone, within 24 hours, will become the last animal they ate. And if you remember correctly, the last thing you ate was takeout fried chicken. That kind of animal is at the bottom of the food chain. When the global animalization arrives, they'll become a delicacy in no time. Just as you were worrying, your good buddy Wong Kili came to find you. But compared to your anxiety, he was unusually excited, because the will of the earth only said, you'd turn into the last animal you ate. But it never said it had to be a modern animal. And Wong Kili's family runs a construction company. Just a few days ago, in a village in the mountains, they actually dug up a Tyrannosaurus Rex fossil. If he could eat that, he'd become a top-tier predator. Elephants, Siberian tigers, they'd all just be his food. So you and Wong Kili put your heads together and immediately drove to the village. But who knew, after arriving, Boss Z, who was guarding the T-Rex fossil, changed his mind on the spot. You see, everyone could hear the Earth's will, especially Boss Z. After learning about the global animalization, he immediately had people secure the T-Rex fossil. At that moment, Boss Z sneered and said, "Forget about this T-Rex fossil. I prepared something else good for you." With that, he had someone bring over a fish tank. Inside was clearly a green turtle. Then you were locked in the woodshed, looking at the nailed-shut windows and doors. Wong Kili was utterly hopeless. But luckily, the last thing he ate last night was an alligator snapping turtle. Even though it's still a turtle, alligator snapping turtles can grow up to 200 kilograms. In terms of defense and attack, they're quite outstanding. You opened your backpack and found only a pack of instant noodles and a sausage inside. If you chose the seasoning packet, you could become a cow. If you chose the sausage, you could become a pig. But both were low-tier fighters. However, you were relieved that at least you could ride on your buddy's coattails. But then you thought, humans are also a type of animal. If you ate yourself, what would you become? At worst, it'd be better than becoming a cow or a pig. So, in the last second before global animalization, you bit down hard on your own arm. Then, the will of the earth plunged all humans into unconsciousness. Bodies began to twist, warp, and reshape, turning into various animals. But one thing worth noting was, they didn't turn into adults directly, but into the juvenile forms of animals. Only by constantly devouring could they evolve. When your good buddy Wong Kili woke up again, he had indeed turned into an alligator snapping turtle. But he looked left and right, and couldn't find you, until he turned around and saw an egg the size of a head behind him. The patterns on this egg were faintly visible, and it even shimmered with a luster. At the same time, you were dumbfounded. You never thought that just by biting yourself, you'd turn into a dragon egg. But even as an egg, you could still see the outside world clearly, and with a full 360-degree view, no less. While you were still in shock, you heard a system voice. Seeing this, you chuckled. No wonder they say you're descendants of the dragon. The true dragon bloodline flows within you. Although it still takes 10,000 years to hatch, you can unlock it early by hunting continuously. And at the same time, you also gain 2 talent skills. The first is Heavenly Thunder Shield. It can summon divine heavenly thunder, dealing massive area damage. And the second is Dragon's Might. Because dragons are born with supreme pressure, it suppresses the vast majority of creatures. Right then, your good buddy Wong Kili, shocked, asks you what the hell you ate. What the hell did you eat? To avoid unnecessary trouble, you lie and say you actually ate an ostrich egg last night. I actually ate an ostrich egg last night. Just as the two of you are talking, a roar comes from outside the door. As the farmhouse door is pushed open, a fierce beast sticks its head in from outside. It's Boss Z, who turned into a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Even though he's still a juvenile, he's already as tall as an adult human. He shouts out, "Wong Kili, I've always hated your rich parents. Today, I'm gonna drink turtle soup to build myself up." Then the group of villagers, who turned into stray dogs, swarm around, even though they have numbers on their side. Seeing the spiky shell and the fierce-looking alligator snapping turtle head, they dare not step forward for a moment. But under Boss Z's pressure, one bigger stray dog still charges forward. Seeing this, Wong Kili immediately bites back at him. With a sharp yelp of pain, the villager's nose gets bitten clean off. You know, the bite force of an alligator snapping turtle can reach an astonishing 450 kilograms. Boss Z is furious now. These lackeys can't even beat a turtle. It's a total loss of face for him. so he just swallows the injured stray dog whole, then roars up at the sky, deciding to handle it himself. Such a bloody scene makes the surrounding villagers tuck their tails and tremble. And Wong Kili isn't much better off either. Looks like at this critical moment, you still need to step in yourself, so you immediately quiet down and start feeling the rules of heaven and earth. Right now, above the village, the sky, which was clear and sunny, suddenly turns dark with clouds. Just as Boss Z crouches down to bite Wong Kili, you shout, "Heavenly Thunder Shield! Heavenly Thunder Shield!" Then, in the cloud-covered sky, a bolt of lightning suddenly appears. Countless animals are struck on the spot, falling dead to the ground. But you and Wong Kili, at the center of the thunder, are wrapped in the aura of Dragon's Might, so you take no damage at all. But Boss Z isn't so lucky. With a scream of agony, his skin and flesh explode. His once thick and sturdy body is now blown to pieces. White brains spill all over the ground. You never expected the Heavenly Thunder Shield to be this powerful. You thought it was single target damage, but it turns out to be area of effect. And the insane power far exceeds your expectations. If this keeps up, you can hatch within a year. Since this is your first kill, the system rewards you with a talent wheel spin. After spinning quickly, the pointer stops on a talent called Dragon's Fury. You don't know what this skill does, but judging by the spiritual energy it consumes, and its awesome name, it probably isn't bad. Originally, you planned to take Wong Kili and hide somewhere remote, then come out and dominate after hatching. But now it seems you need to change your approach. Kill as many as come. So Wong Kili carries you out of the village. But as you pass through some grass, a mouse the size of a palm suddenly pops out. Looks like it's out hunting at night. And Wong Kili, in order to evolve, suddenly opened his mouth wide and swallowed the other creature whole. Then, in Wong Kili's mind, an evolution point appeared. It could be used to add to his evolutionary genes. This made Wong Kili extremely excited. If he hadn't turned into a turtle, he would have wanted to celebrate right there. Then, based on your analysis, Wong Kili added the evolution point to defense, because the snapping turtle's bite force was already very strong. There was no need to gild the lily. However, the shell of a juvenile turtle wasn't that hard yet, so defense was the best choice. The moment the evolution point was consumed, the turtle shell made a sound like bones cracking. Then, at a visible speed, it became thicker and sturdier. Then the two of them continued on their way. After 3 days of traveling over mountains, you finally saw again a city full of neon lights and bustling life. You thought that after humans turned into animals, these things would have vanished like smoke, but you never expected them to still exist. It was as if they were a continuation of human civilization. But just as you arrived at the city gate, a group of vicious dogs blocked your path. Seeing this, Wong Kili immediately opened his mouth wide to intimidate these uninvited guests. Luckily, these vicious dogs meant no harm. After a brief conversation, you learned they were from the vicious dog gang. While Wong Kili was negotiating with them, you sized up the group of dogs. They all seemed to have reached the growth stage. Sure enough, it was easier to evolve in the city. After all, there were many people there. At that moment, the vicious dog gang said that if you wanted to enter, you had to pay a protection fee. It turned out that on the second day of the global animalization, someone had surprisingly discovered that evolution points could be directly transferred. This meant that besides killing, you could also make others hand them over willingly. But the main source of evolution points was still through killing, except for herbivores, because they obtained evolution points by eating grass. So, a large number of herbivores were herded by carnivores. They were exploited every day. To avoid unnecessary trouble, you ended up paying 8 evolution points before being let in. But you had already made up your mind that once you entered the vicious dog gang's territory, you would find an opportunity to lure all these dogs close to you and then hit them with a heavenly thunder shield. After entering the city, you looked at the scene before you with utter disbelief. It was as if you had returned to before the animalization. Although it wasn't perfectly orderly, it wasn't chaotic either. There were all kinds of animals on the streets, with many vicious dogs patrolling everywhere. They seemed to have become enforcers, maintaining order in the city. Just as you were still in shock, a pure white rabbit suddenly hopped over to Wong Kili's side, scaring him so much he almost shrank back into his shell. It turned out this rabbit's name was Zia Chinking. Seeing that it was your first time in the city, she wanted to come and help you. However, her cunning eyes didn't escape your notice, but you didn't expose her. Instead, you wanted to see what she was up to. So, under Zia Chinking's enthusiastic invitation, you headed toward her home. But gradually, Wong Kili noticed something was wrong, because they were getting farther and farther from the city. Zia Chinking explained that herbivores like them didn't have much say so they lived in more remote areas. Under her guidance, you eventually arrived at a shabby rental house. Xia Qingqing's parents were very welcoming, and soon prepared dinner. On their plates were some grass. As for Wang Qili, he was given a piece of pork. As for you, you were completely ignored. However, as time went on, Wang Qili felt his eyelids getting heavier and heavier. In the end, he actually fell into a deep sleep. It turned out that this plate of pork had been tampered with. It was all to make Wang Qili take the bait. And their goal, of course, was you. If they handed you over to the evil dog gang, they could leave the city and gain their freedom. But you saw this whole scene unfold. This was truly a case of you can find a place without even looking for it. And it comes without any effort. As long as you reach the evil dog gang's headquarters, and then unleashed a heavenly thunder shield, you could wipe them all out in one go. So, very soon, you were taken by Xia Qingqing to the leader of the evil dog gang, Black Dog King. And through your consciousness, you observed that he was a cane corso. Although he was still in his growth stage, he was actually a fist bigger than a real adult cane corso. The Black Dog King's name was Wang Ling. He used to be a professional fighter, but because of an injury from boxing, he was lying in the hospital and with no other choice. He had to reincarnate into a nearby cane corso. It was after the animalization descended that a miracle happened. All the wounds covering his body instantly healed completely without a trace. Although he had become a dog, at least a cane corso wasn't a bad breed. Relying on his fighting instincts, he easily defeated all his enemies. In the end, he became the Black Dog King. At that moment, he licked his lips. He had clearly already eaten dinner, but after seeing this egg, he always felt like he could eat something more, so he couldn't wait to open his mouth and swallow it down directly. But the next second, an extremely powerful aura burst out from the egg. The Black Dog King was immediately crushed to the ground by this pressure. Then your voice rang out like a bell. Kneel before the being without a lowly sword. Just a few words, and the Black Dog King was shaken with internal injuries. The bones in his body even let out a cracking, grinding sound. At that moment, the underlings outside heard his screams, and had just approached, only to be pinned to the ground by the dragon's might. Then you spoke again, ordering the Black Dog King to gather all his men together, and he, worthy of being the leader of the evil dog gang, managed to muster a shred of rebellious willpower. But you immediately stopped holding back. You released your full dragon might again, which instantly made the Black Dog King dare not struggle anymore, because he felt like his will was about to collapse. Once all the members of the evil dog gang had arrived, you stopped releasing the dragon might, and the Black Dog King was like a drained man, clearly exhausted. At that moment, he asked you with terrified eyes what you wanted from them. Originally, you planned to destroy him, but you changed your mind on the spot, because the evil dog gang, in just a few days, had evolved so impressively. Thanks to the help of a group of herbivores, they could endlessly harvest evolution points, so you could also make them hand over all their evolution points to you. That way, your hatching speed would definitely increase by a huge margin. So you made them choose, either submit to you, or be sent to the afterlife. And after witnessing your terrifying power, they chose to submit without any hesitation. The Black Dog King even handed over all his remaining evolution points to you. This instantly reduced your hatching time from 10,000 years to 9,890 years. Since it was the first time using the evolution point acceleration system, you were rewarded with another talent wheel. So, you drew a talent called Spiritual Energy Transformation. This talent allows the dragon egg to generate 100.07 evolution points per day through breathing. In other words, you could now stay far away from the city. Just need to lie low for 2 or 3 years and it'll hatch successfully. And there's no risk at all. But in this era, the world's landscape changes every single day. You can't wait that long. Then you officially renamed the evil dog gang to Dragon Dynasty. And everything about Dragon Dynasty is still fully managed by Black Dog King. Hearing this, Black Dog King's eyes lit up again. Your move left him completely convinced and obedient. Right then and there, he started calling you boss. Then, through Black Dog King's account, you finally understood the city's full situation. Turns out, Haisheng City was now split into 3 factions, and the Dragon Dynasty you led was one of them. The remaining 2 were the Cat Gang led by Mealy Cat, and the Rat Pack led by Rat King. This left you a bit speechless. Some people actually eat rats, but that Rat King kid was also a tough guy. You see, on the eve of animalization, everyone was looking for larger animals, but he chose rats, just because throughout history, rats could thrive in all kinds of extreme, harsh environments, and live quite comfortably. So at the very last second of animalization, he held back his disgust and swallowed a rat. And after transforming, he immediately led the rat horde to quickly take over the entire city's sewers. However, just as you were racking your brains over how to eliminate the cat gang and the rat pack. This tough problem made the former evil dog gang's strategist step forward, and it turned out to be a husky. His plan was simple: lure those cats and rats to a hidden location first, then burn them all to death. You looked at the husky, who seemed so profound, and immediately pointed out the flaw in his plan, which was how to get them to take the bait without a big enough lure. This plan was just talk on paper. It wouldn't do any good at all. But then you thought about it. If we're talking about an attractive bait, what could be more tempting than yourself? So, to test it out, you stopped hiding your aura and instantly radiated a dazzling light. Right. Then the dogs around you started drooling with desire. Wasn't this the perfect bait right there? But just as you were discussing the next steps, your good brother Wong Kili was brought in by his men. Turns out, this morning, when Wong Kili woke up, he found you missing from his back. So, panicked, he immediately surrounded the rabbit family. After forcing them to confess, he learned you'd been taken to the evil dog gang. This instantly filled Wong Kili with guilt. If it weren't for his own gluttony, this wouldn't have happened. Then, under his threats, Zia Chinking led him here. The moment he saw you, he ran over excitedly, and was also completely shocked. How did you, just after being born, become the leader of the evil dog gang? But recalling the heavenly thunder from before, he seemed to understand something. As for Wong Kili's reaction, you were also very happy, because this was what a true brother was. Even knowing the evil dog gang was full of danger, he still came looking for you. After briefly explaining the situation to Wong Kili, he immediately started shouting for you to just strike them with lightning. He was practically overflowing with arrogance, but you just grinned and said you had a better plan. After all, using heavenly thunder to protect yourself also consumed spiritual energy. Soon, it was the third day. In the city, a shocking rumor suddenly spread that the leader of the evil dog gang had obtained a glowing egg. This egg shimmered with light all over. It didn't look like anything from the mortal world. Many guessed it was most likely a dragon egg. Any ordinary animal that eats it can gain the bloodline of a dragon. Once this news got out, it caused a huge uproar across the entire city. Immediately, forces from all sides began to make their moves. Meanwhile, on the other side, the rat gang and the cat gang, after learning of the existence of the dragon eggs, also started to scheme, because any ordinary animal that eats it can gain the bloodline of a dragon. However, hindered by the strength of the vicious dogs, the two gangs decided to join forces. They agreed to come together to snatch the eggs, and their plan was quite simple. The cat gang would draw the enemy's fire from the front, while the rat gang would steal the dragon eggs through the sewers. But what they didn't know was that you had already set up an ambush, just waiting for the prey to walk right into the trap. And although you had been staying in the warehouse these past few days, the Black Hound King came by every day to hand over the evolution points he had collected. Of course, you didn't take everything. You only took 80%, because the Black Hound King also needed to improve his strength. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to keep such a large territory under control. And it wasn't just him. All the dogs from the vicious hound gang, as well as the herbivore animals they kept penned up under your arrangement, besides handing over most of their evolution points each day, were allowed to keep a little for themselves to boost their own strength. Moreover, herbivore animals that had grown to the development stage actually generated even more evolution points each day. So why not go along with it? At that moment, the Black Hound King, as usual, brought over the day's evolution points. But what puzzled you was that the amount you received today was actually double what you got yesterday. It turned out that after you announced the new rules, many herbivore animals from other factions had secretly come over to join the dragon's nest. Although they would still be exploited, at least they could keep a little for themselves. So, tempted by this, the number of herbivore animals on the dragon's nest's territory had increased significantly. As a result, the evolution points increased accordingly. After understanding the whole story, you instructed the Black Hound King again, saying there was no need to restrict their movements. Let the herbivore animals live as freely as possible. That way, they wouldn't be provoked into rebellion. However, if anyone did cause trouble, you still had to occasionally pick out a few to make an example of. To warn the rest, after the Black Hound King left, you looked at the evolution points just handed in, and, without hesitation, took out half of them to speed up the hatching of the eggs. As for the rest, you chose to use them for the lottery. After all, besides hatching, talents were the only way to improve your strength at this point. As you activated the talent wheel, the pointer began to spin rapidly. Finally, it stopped on a talent called Dragon Soul Contract. As long as the host activates this talent, they can form a master-servant contract with creatures of a lower bloodline. The contracted party will be unable to escape control. Seeing such an awesome talent, you almost screamed with excitement. Although you had all kinds of powerful skills at your disposal, the problem was that you were just an egg. So, before you successfully hatched, you had to establish a trustworthy organization. And up to this point, besides Wong Kili, who was worthy of your trust, you didn't trust a single one of those dogs from the vicious hound gang. After all, they had only submitted temporarily. If anything went wrong, they would definitely betray you immediately. And this newly acquired talent was undoubtedly a lifesaver for your current urgent problem. As time passed and morning arrived, the dragon's nest was visited by uninvited guests. Catboss led a group of underlings and stormed up to the front gate with a menacing air. But before they could even start shouting, the vicious dogs, who had already received word, suddenly popped their heads out from all directions, as if descending from the heavens, surrounding them completely, leaving no way out. Then, the Black Hound King walked out, surrounded by a pack of dogs. But the moment he laid eyes on Catboss, he furrowed his brow, because in just a few days' time, the opponent's body had actually grown a full size larger, nearly matching his own. And before the animal transformation, the reason dogs could easily overpower cats was entirely due to their size advantage. But if they were the same size, a cat's reaction speed and agility would far surpass a dog's. Just as Black Dog King was lost in thought, Catboss let out a shout, and with an exaggerated motion, he instantly leapt into the air. A flash of sharp light streaked by, and a dog's throat was slit on the spot. Catboss's sudden attack caught Black Dog King completely off guard. He never imagined the opponent could be this fast, but there was no time to dwell on it. After letting out a long howl to the sky, he charged forward as well. The two sides immediately clashed in a fierce battle, and because Catboss had been squeezing the herbivores, his forces were clearly much stronger than Dragon Dynasty's. Although the fight was evenly matched for now, if things continued this way, defeat was only a matter of time. Meanwhile, back in the warehouse, Rat King led a group of underlings sneaking in. The moment he saw the egg on the table, he couldn't take his eyes off it, because the more powerful an animal is, the more they can sense her extraordinary nature. At that moment, in Rat King's mind, it was as if an incredibly tempting voice urged him to go over and eat it. But before he could take 2 steps, Rat King suddenly bit his tongue, forcing himself to snap out of it, because as he got closer to the dragon egg, a strong sense of danger suddenly surged through him. This immediately put Rat King on high alert, and at that moment, you, inside the dragon egg, were also startled by his strange behavior. You had just planned to wait for him to get closer, and then kill him instantly. But as soon as you locked onto his aura, he somehow saw through it. It seemed this guy's strength was definitely above both Black Dog King and Catboss, and by a significant margin. Now the cunning Rat King sent his underlings to test the waters. They thought it was an easy job, but little did they know, with a sudden sound, a dragon's roar of fury rang out. In an instant, a 1-to-6-star blind formation took shape. Orange red flames, carrying terrifying heat, burst forth, engulfing the entire warehouse in the blink of an eye. The few rats that had just approached you didn't even have time to scream before they vanished completely in the flames. This hair-raising scene terrified every rat present. The cowardice hidden deep in their genes forced them to flee this living hell. But before they could take 2 steps, another change occurred. A supreme pressure descended from the sky, crashing down heavily on them. All the rats, including Rat King, fell flat on the ground with a thud. Rat King struggled to lift his head and asked in disbelief who you were. Who are you? But after learning you were the new boss of the Vicious Dog Gang, he only then remembered that a few days ago, the Vicious Dog Gang had suddenly renamed itself Dragon Dynasty. Back then, he had even mocked it at a meeting. But now he realized it was because the master had changed. And after witnessing your terrifying power firsthand, he knew there was no chance of winning. Although Rat King had held back some of his strength, asking a martial artist to fight a cultivator was really pushing it for a rat. So Rat King flopped backward, lying flat on the ground, admitting that since he had fallen into your hands, he was resigned to his fate. Since he had fallen into your hands, he was resigned to his fate. Then he closed his eyes, utterly defeated. However, you didn't kill him. Instead, you gave him 2 choices. 1. Die, reduced to nothing but ashes. 2. Submit to you. The Rat King, lying on the ground, heard this. He immediately sprang up like a carp. Without any hesitation, he chose to surrender. I choose to surrender. And this ridiculous scene almost made his underlings' jaws drop. Was this still that ruthless Rat King? The reason you didn't kill him was because you realized that, aside from being a bit ugly, he was actually a pretty useful talent. Due to the animal transformation, all previous communication devices had stopped working. The only information you could gather now was limited to this small city of Haisheng. As for what was happening outside, you had no idea at all. Since you decided to take the path of a ruler, you had to fully grasp all this information. And the Rat King and his underlings were undoubtedly the best choice for intelligence work, because rats are small and nimble. They could sneak into other settlements to gather intel without anyone noticing. And their strong adaptability allowed them to survive in all kinds of extreme environments. They were practically born spies. So, to test the Rat King's loyalty, you told him to show his sincerity. After hearing this, he just lowered his head and thought for a moment, then said that he would kill the cat boss. I will kill the cat boss. That should be enough to prove my loyalty, right? After seeing you nod in agreement, the Rat King turned into a shadow and dashed out of the warehouse. Meanwhile, at the entrance of the Dragon Court, the cat boss had completely lost his mind in the fight. He had totally forgotten about the plan to steal the dragon egg together. They only needed to stall for time, not fight so desperately. But once the battle started, who could still care about that? Seeing that the Dragon Court was about to lose, the cat boss had only one thought in his mind: to take them down in one go, and then go wipe out those stinking rats. But just then, a very fast shadow quickly approached. In just a moment, it reached the center of the battlefield. When it stopped, the cats and dogs present finally saw clearly that it was a rat as big as a dog. This sudden turn of events left all the animals completely stunned. Did this rat become a spirit? How did it get so big? The cat boss immediately recognized it as the Rat King. Though he didn't know how it got so big, he had no time to ask. He just wanted to join forces with him to wipe out these dumb dogs. But before the cat boss could speak, he suddenly let out a scream. It turned out that the Rat King, standing in front of him, had attacked without any warning. His sharp teeth, in an instant, pierced through his throat. After a moment, the Rat King finally let go. Then, dragging the body, he disappeared again. With the cat boss dead, the Black Dog King became the strongest fighter on the field. So, under his command, the cats were quickly subdued. Meanwhile, you were waiting in the warehouse. The reason you dared to let the Rat King go was that, with nothing else to do these past few days, you had discovered a new way to use your talent skills. For example, you could seal the Thunder Shield inside your good buddy Wong Killy's body. As long as he willed it, he could activate it on the spot. But since he didn't have the dragon's bloodline, using the Thunder Shield would come with a heavy price. As for the Dragon's Wrath, you found an even more twisted use for it. Once you locked onto a certain aura, the Dragon's Wrath would automatically track it, with no way to escape. And just now in the warehouse, you had already locked onto the Rat King's aura. If he didn't return within 3 minutes, or if you sensed he was about to leave, you would unleash the Dragon's Wrath without hesitation. But just then, the warehouse door was roughly thrown open. The Rat King dragged the corpse of Cat Boss straight through the entrance. After receiving your approval, his body suddenly shrank, returning to its original size. Then he lay down before you. It turned out that to complete the task just now, he had gone all out, using his full strength. Such an extreme enlargement, even the Rat King couldn't handle it well. But before he could catch his breath, a piercing dragon roar suddenly exploded in the Rat King's mind. He felt his vision go dark, and then he completely lost consciousness. It turned out you had activated your innate Dragon Soul contract. After waiting in the warehouse for nearly 10 minutes, the Rat King slowly woke up, but his eyes were hollow and vacant, as if he had experienced something utterly terrifying. It turned out the Dragon Soul contract you released was a type of slave contract. After the contract was completed, the powerful Dragon Soul would leave an indelible mark deep within the other's soul. And ordinary creatures have very fragile souls, plus rats are naturally timid. Having just gone through this process, the Rat King naturally suffered quite a bit. But now you could clearly feel a strange connection between yourself and the Rat King. It was a feeling of being able to control his life and death. With Cat Boss's death and the Rat King's submission, this great battle finally came to an end. Now, Shanghai was almost completely under your control. Soon, night fell. You called all the leaders of your organization to give orders for Dragon Dynasty's next step. That was that you still needed more evolution points, so the territory needed to expand outward. But before that, you had to deal with the threats within the city. Although besides them, the other factions in the city were nothing to fear. It was still safer to keep them under control. Otherwise, if you let them develop, they might cause trouble someday. You didn't want to be fighting outside while problems arose in your rear. So this task was assigned to Black Dog King to handle. As for the Rat King, he would lead his rat swarm to scout the situation outside of Shanghai. Since you needed these guys to do work, you naturally had to give them a little incentive first. So, you simply split the evolution points collected today into 2 portions and gave them to Black Dog King and Rat King respectively. Both were thrilled at the news and immediately said in unison, "Thank you, boss." But just then, the Rat King suggested that since you were expanding your territory, just calling you boss was a bit beneath your status. You needed a more imposing title. So the Rat King lowered his head and thought for a moment, then seemed to have a good idea. "Since you're a dragon egg, and our organization is called Dragon Dynasty, how about we call you Sovereign from now on?" But you didn't really care about titles. The name Dragon Dynasty was chosen on a whim in the first place. But since these guys were happy to call you that, you couldn't be bothered to argue. Let them do as they pleased, no matter how fancy the title. In the face of absolute power, it's all meaningless. The next morning, Black Dog King gathered a large pack of dogs and set out toward the other animal factions in the city. In just 2 days, some surrendered and some disappeared. As for the Rat King, the day after the meeting ended, he led a group of underlings and left, heading to other cities to gather information. Before long, a month had passed. At the Dragon Dynasty headquarters, you idly looked over your system panel. For the past month, you had used all the evolution points collected each day to speed up your own hatching time, from the original 9,880 years down to over 8,000 years. But you still weren't quite satisfied with the speed, because within that short month, several more very strange things had happened. Besides the Rat King, over a dozen more mutated animals had appeared in the city. Some of them had mastered the ability to instantly multiply their strength dozens of times. Others had gained the speed to break past their own limits, and some grew incredibly powerful claws that could easily tear through a wall. These animals seemed to have mutated suddenly, gaining powers that defied the laws of nature. And to this day, you still hadn't found the specific cause of these mutations. But fortunately, among the mutated animals, most were members of the Dragon's Nest. Even the Black Dog King was among them. With his help and that of a few others, they managed to subdue those mutated ones. But just like the Rat King, when using their powers, they also consumed a huge amount of energy and couldn't keep it up for long. Just as you were lost in thought, you were interrupted by a sharp voice. And from the sound of it, it was clearly the Rat King, who had been gone for a month. His body had grown even larger, obviously having reached maturity. Then, through his account, you learned about the situation in Bahai City. And Bahai City was where you and Wang Kailing originally lived. Back then, you drove to the mountains to find the studio. Later, Wang Kili turned into an alligator turtle, and you turned into an egg. After several days of hard travel, you finally made it to Shanghai City, let alone getting back to Bahai City. And now that place was taken over by a pride of lions, all of whom had reached maturity. Their leader was a guy calling himself the Golden Lion King, which was really just a mountain lion that had gained special abilities from the movie. But the Rat King said that the opponent's power was terrifying. Even when he went to scout, he almost got caught. Yet that only made you more interested. After all, Bahai City was where you had lived for over a decade. And it wasn't that far from Shanghai City. So going back to check it out sounded good. So that night, you gathered all the leaders and announced your plan to leave. As for Shanghai City, it would be entirely managed by the Black Dog King. The evolution points collected each day would be temporarily kept by him and handed over to you when you returned. After all, once mutated animals appeared in the city, you didn't hesitate to use your blood eggs and mark them all with the Dragon Soul contract, including the Black Dog King. So as long as the Dragon Soul contract existed, they wouldn't dare have any ideas about you. As time came to the next day, on a highway outside Shanghai City, Wang Kili was slowly crawling along the road carrying you. After more than a month, this odd pair of you was once again setting off on a new journey, but the wilderness had changed quite a bit. The once flat, straight highway was now gradually covered with vines. At this rate, within a few decades, the cities left behind by humans would be completely overtaken by the wild. Although you could see traces of various animals along the road, very few were actually traveling on it like you. You found that, unless they were very fierce beasts. And to reach Bahai City, this highway was already the shortest route. No matter what trouble you encountered along the way, you'd have to tough it out. Before this departure, the Black Dog King had planned to lead half the members to escort you, but after thinking it over, you firmly refused. Because with your current strength, you weren't afraid of any wild animals out there, and you didn't even need to lift a finger. Having Wang Kili around was more than enough to handle things, even if he was a bit slow. But you're not in a hurry either. Just consider it practice for Wang Kili. However, just at that moment, the voice of Earth suppression appeared again. As the voice faded, a storm was already raging in your heart, because what Earth had been referring to as unnatural ability animals definitely meant animals like the Rat King, those that had gained supernatural powers. And did this mean that something capable of threatening you would appear? Then the two of you continued on your way, along the rest of the journey. Although you encountered many ambushing animals, with your perfect teamwork, they were all easily dealt with. But just as you passed through a bamboo grove, a deafening roar, but it shattered the peace here. It was accompanied by the sound of heavy footsteps. Since the alligator turtle had poor eyesight, you had been acting as his eyes the whole way. But just as you were about to use the divine stone, a black and white figure suddenly burst out of the bamboo grove, shouting, "Finally, I'm saved." Without another word, he hid behind you. But at that moment, you and Wong Kili almost dropped your jaws in shock when you saw him, because his black and white fur, along with those iconic dark eye circles, clearly marked him as a panda. And most importantly, he could talk. That meant he was a human transformed. Who would have thought that before the animal transformation? Someone actually dared to eat a national treasure. But before you could even recover, 8 brown figures suddenly appeared. They were all majestic lions, and the leading lion, upon seeing the panda behind Wong Kili, let out a terrifying roar. The piercing sound instantly terrified every animal within miles, causing quite a commotion. The moment he heard the roar, the panda was so scared he covered his ears, crouched on the ground, trembling. But just then, the leading lion suddenly noticed an egg on the back of that alligator turtle. With just one brief glance, he couldn't tear his eyes away. He never expected such an unexpected prize on this trip. If he brought this egg back to the boss, he would surely be richly rewarded. However, just as the lions were about to charge all at once, a terrifying pressure crashed down. With a thud, aside from the leading lion, all the others were pinned to the ground, as if crushed by 1,000 tons of weight. At that moment, the leading lion's brow was tightly furrowed, as if enduring immense pain. He gritted his teeth, struggling desperately to stay on his feet. This left you, inside the dragon egg, utterly stunned. You knew you hadn't held back at all. You had unleashed your maximum pressure right away. Yet this guy, though clearly struggling, somehow refused to be completely brought down. And just then, he braced himself against the pressure, threw his head back, and let out a long roar. Then, his originally brown fur inexplicably began to glow with a faint light. The muscles on his limbs and torso instantly bulged, brimming with explosive power. And his eyes, the size of billiard balls, blazed with a terrifying glare. Wong Kili and the panda, caught in his gaze, felt as if they had fallen into an icy pit, as if being watched by something utterly horrifying. After his body transformed, the pressure on the leading lion suddenly lessened. He actually stood upright and stared at you with a grave expression, asking what you really were. But you didn't bother to answer him. Instead, you whispered to Wong Kili, who was beneath you. Seeing that you ignored him, the leading lion was filled with rage, so he stomped his feet hard against the ground and lunged violently toward Wong Kili. His sharp claws, at lightning speed, came crashing down in an instant, and his target was right on Wong Kili's back. But the moment the enemy launched his attack, Wong Kili moved as well. Under your command, he climbed up the panda's back at incredible speed. With a shout of heavenly thunder shield, the sky, which had been clear for miles, suddenly exploded with a thunderclap. In the blink of an eye, a golden bolt of lightning crashed down. Instantly, within a 50-meter radius around you, it turned into a sea of golden thunder, violently destroying all life within its range. As the lightning gradually faded, the once dense bamboo forest around you had formed a massive empty zone. The lion pack lay scattered on the ground, all life already gone from their eyes. And the leading lion, the closest to the thunder's center, had his fur singed and turned outward, giving off a very unpleasant burnt smell. But incredibly, he hadn't been electrocuted to death. Instead, while you were stunned, his body suddenly burst with a red glow. Then a thick, bloody scent hit your nose, making Wong Kili and the panda's minds go a bit hazy. When they snapped back to reality, the leading lion had already turned into a red figure, fleeing rapidly into the distance. Seeing this, you were deeply shocked, because you could clearly feel that his life force had already begun to fade. Yet somehow he still managed to escape. But what puzzled you most wasn't just that your attack failed, but that the heavenly thunder shield, which had killed a Tyrannosaurus Rex, hadn't finished him off either. Although he looked severely injured, he had truly survived the heavenly thunder shield. In just one short day, 2 of your 3 ultimate moves had been blocked. This was the first time since you became an animal that you had faced such a setback. But setbacks aside, you still had to deal with the immediate problem. So you immediately activated Dragon's Wrath. A fiery red 6-pointed formation instantly took shape above your head. After circling a few times, it shot out toward the direction the leading lion had fled. As soon as you sensed something was off, you had already locked onto his aura, just to make sure he couldn't get away. Once Dragon's Wrath was unleashed, Even if he fled to the ends of the earth, he would be dead for sure. With the system's notification, you finally felt relieved. But what surprised you was that you had gained so many evolution points all at once. You know, just now, the lions you killed with Heavenly Thunder Shield only gave you a little over 300 points. This was just too good. But right then, you remembered there was still a panda around. So after asking, you found out that he was actually an acquaintance of Wong Killy's. His name was Panda, and the Pan family used to be one of the top families in Mohai City. But after that damn animalization hit, he ended up like this. Then, as Panda described things, you finally understood the situation in Mohai City, and it actually involved Wong Killy. It turned out that after the animalization began, those despicable lions had taken over his family's big villa. This immediately made Wong Killy nervous. Losing the house wasn't a big deal. After all, everyone was an animal now, and anywhere was fine to live. But what he cared about most was whether his parents had returned to Mohai City with their stubborn, old-fashioned thinking. If they found the house taken over, they'd definitely fight those lions to the death. As Panda continued talking, you truly understood the chaos in Bahai City. It turned out that after the lions took over Bahai City, at first they were just like the earlier evil dog gang. Have the animals hand over evolution points every day to build up their own strength. Even though the herbivores are being squeezed, at least they're not in danger of losing their lives. But ever since the earth descended again, everything changed completely. Some careless idiot suddenly discovered a pattern and then broke the herbivores' original living conditions, because they found out that if herbivores faced extreme life-threatening danger the day before and survived, the evolution points they could get the next day would increase dramatically. So this pride of lions bared their fangs. They screened out some herbivores that produced few evolution points each day and gathered them together for a frenzy of chasing and killing. In the end, only 1 out of 10 herbivores could barely survive. Yet in such a dangerous Bahai City, you showed no fear. Even though you just went through a small setback, you still didn't use your full power. Since 1 layer of Heavenly Thunder protection wasn't enough, then just use the esophagus directly. Besides, you have an even more terrifying power, the Dragon's Wrath. And before, the reason you didn't choose to add new talents: first, you hadn't met a strong opponent. Second, this system is too shady. At first, you thought each talent draw only cost 1,000 spiritual energy, but that wasn't the case. Instead, after each draw, the next one would require double the spiritual energy. But with what's happening now, you realized it was time to add a new talent. And the day before you set out, you specifically had the Black Hound King collect a batch of evolution points in advance. But to use them for talent draws, you'd probably only get 1 draw, because the next one would double again. Meaning for 1,000 points wouldn't be enough. And even if it were enough, you wouldn't dare use it all on draws, because you'd need to save some for self-defense. Still, having 1 extra talent was great, because every talent drawn from the system has an incredible effect. So thinking this over, you directly started the draw. The moment the spiritual energy was deducted, the wheel began to spin. With the system's introduction, you instantly understood the new talent's function. It looked like a crowd control skill, but it wasn't that simple, because it could increase its power based on the spiritual energy consumed, and it was specifically for attacking the soul. This was exactly the skill you needed right now. No matter how tough those lions' bodies were, they couldn't possibly have equally strong souls, right? Besides, their bodies might not even withstand your tenfold Heavenly Thunder protection. Meanwhile, Panda, after a moment of thought, seemed to make an extremely important decision, then said with a determined look that he wanted to go with you to Bahai City. This left you a bit puzzled. This guy was scared to death just now, but now suddenly became resolute. So under Panda's explanation, you learned the whole story. It turned out that, after the animal transformation, his whole family had turned into pandas, because they could produce a lot of evolution points. The lion pride kept them well fed every day, even though they were endlessly exploited. At least they had food and drink. But after this disaster struck, those greedy lions actually started complaining about their production speed being too slow. Then, by chance, Panda's dad got wind of something. The lion pride was planning to use them for experiments, to make them take part in the plan to farm evolution points. But Panda's dad immediately refused. This was practically forcing them into a dead end. So they planned to wait until dark, when the lion's guard was weakest, to break out in one go and escape Bahai City. If they weren't being oppressed, with a panda's growth rate, standing on their own in the wild wouldn't be a problem at all. Even though they're herbivores, they're still bears. Their attack power, compared to some fierce carnivores, is no slouch either. But what no one expected was that they had vastly underestimated the ferocity of those lions. After discovering they planned to escape, the lion pride didn't hesitate at all, and launched an attack on them. Oppressed every day as they were, how could they possibly defeat the lion pride? So they were quickly defeated, and all of them suffered severe injuries. As for Panda's dad, he was killed on the spot under the claws of those lions. In the end, only Panda managed to escape in the chaos. He was chased all the way here by them. Originally, he planned to escape on his own, develop in the wild for a few years, and then return for revenge once he had the strength. But ever since he met you, he changed his mind, because with your incredible strength, you could easily crush these lions. After hearing his story, you immediately agreed to help him get revenge. After all, the purpose of this trip was to rule over Bahai City, so sooner or later, you'd have to face those lions anyway. In that case, you might as well do him a favor. Time quickly passed to the afternoon of the next day. After 7 days of travel, you finally arrived at your destination, Mohai City. But at the city gate right now, several lions were patrolling back and forth. If you rushed in recklessly, you'd definitely be chased down. Because all along the way, the closer you got to Bahai City, the fewer animals you encountered. Especially in the last half hour of the journey, you didn't see a single animal. This is an era of universal beastification. Animals are way more numerous than before. So you deduced that the surrounding herbivores had all been captured. 2 farm evolution points. Honestly, with your strength, charging straight in wouldn't be hard. But if you did that, it would definitely alert the lion pride. If they found out how strong you are, they'd be scared off immediately. With how slow you guys are, you'd never catch them. You have Dragon's Wrath for tracking, but it's a single target skill, so you can't take on that many at once. And your rule is, if you don't strike, you don't strike at all. When you do, you have to crush them. Because if even one escapes, it could cause trouble for you later. Even though that possibility is extremely slim, you still have to nip it in the bud. But just then, Panda said he knew a place where they might be able to sneak into the city. So, you came to a creepy, eerie graveyard. It turns out that on the surface, it's a graveyard. But actually, it's an air raid shelter that leads into the city. If you dig open the entrance tunnel, you can go straight to the city center. Wong Kili immediately stepped forward and started digging in the ground. Not because he was so diligent, but because this place was one he didn't want to stay in for even a minute. A graveyard already full of tombstones. And because it hadn't been tended to in a long time, it now looked incredibly desolate and eerie. Plus, it was nighttime, and a strange fog had risen around them. A scene like this would probably make anyone want to stay far away. Even though you've all turned into animals, you're not purely animals, because you still have human self-awareness in your minds, and you can feel fear and panic. But you have to admit, the alligator turtle's digging ability is pretty impressive. In just over 10 minutes, the original bushes had disappeared, replaced by a huge pit over 3 feet deep. At the bottom of the deep pit, there was a massive stone manhole cover. With a grunt from Panda, he roughly shoved the cover aside, revealing a pitch-black hole. But after entering the bomb shelter, you were blocked by a solid wall, made of poured concrete. So you used your divine stone to sense the wall's thickness, but you couldn't see anything beyond it, which meant the wall was extremely thick. Without heavy machinery, there was no way to break through it. But with no better option, you decided to try forcing your way through. As the dragon's wrath was unleashed, a fiery red 6-star blind array instantly formed. Orange red flames surged like a tidal wave, and the tunnel, which had been chilly, suddenly heated up several notches. Seeing such a terrifying sight, Wong Kili couldn't help but swallow nervously. Even though she'd seen this before, facing it again, she still couldn't suppress the fear inside. And Panda, who had been so excited, now stood frozen in place. The power of this fireball was just too great. If he got any closer, he'd probably be roasted alive. When the dragon's wrath was summoned, without your attack command, it would remain in fireball form for 5 minutes, then naturally dissipate. As the fireball neared the wall, the concrete melted away like ice and snow. In just a moment, the once thick wall now had a black passage carved through it. Using Dragon's Wrath to burn through this wall was definitely overkill, but it was the only ability you had to break through. As the fireball slowly faded, you passed through the wall safely and reached the center of Bahai City. The moment you emerged from the shelter, you looked around cautiously. Seeing no trace of any animals, you finally breathed a sigh of relief, because showing up openly in the Lion Pride's territory was extremely dangerous. Then you started discussing how to wipe out the Lion Pride in one go. After a heated debate, you all agreed to stick with the old method. First, you'd act as bait to lure all the lions over, then use the Heavenly Thunder Shield to take them out at once. This method, though simple, was extremely effective. But it couldn't be done right now. At least, you had to wait until they gathered together before striking. Then, led by Panda, you decided to hide out at his cousin's house first. With your divine stone scanning, you easily avoided all the animals and quickly reached your destination. It was a 3-story Western-style villa, looking a bit old, but still quite grand. The villa's front door was wide open, and looking in, it was pitch black. Not like any animal lived there, but your divine stone scan revealed that not only were there animals inside, but quite a few of them. Before you could even approach the door, several barking sounds suddenly rang out. Then, several large Shiba Inu dogs rushed out from behind the door, surrounding you completely. But when they saw Panda's face, one of the Shibas immediately stepped forward. Led by him, you walked unhindered into the courtyard. But before you could see what was inside, Wong Kili immediately shivered. All around you on the ground lay all kinds of animals, common cats and dogs, not to mention, but even snakes and insects, and even to clouded leopards. They were all carnivores. Your arrival instantly drew the attention of every animal, and they stared at you intently. It was like seeing a delicious meal. The scene was about to spiral out of control. A heaven-shaking pressure descended from above. Instantly, the surrounding animals felt like they were trapped in an ice cave. They all collapsed to the ground, gasping for breath. And at this critical moment, you naturally unleashed your dragon's might, temporarily bringing the situation under control. But just then, the living room door was suddenly pushed open. Then a black figure stepped out. It was a black panther with a fierce look in its eyes. Before he could even take in the scene in the yard, or speak to Panda, he felt a wave of pressure bearing down on him. Seeing that he was about to collapse, Panda quickly told you to hold back. He explained that the Black Panther was his cousin. As you withdrew your dragon's might, the pressure finally faded away. Then, as Panda recounted the story, he told of his experiences after leaving the city, and laid out your plan for revenge. After hearing the plan, Panda's cousin, Panting, turned her gaze back to you, her eyes full of wariness. That sudden pressure from before was like a raging flood or a wild beast. Forget fighting back. She didn't even have the will to resist. With that egg's help, maybe it really could be done. Time quickly passed to the next day. With a loud crash, the door of the small villa was kicked open. Panting, who had gone out to gather information, came rushing back in a panic. It turned out that those guys were about to lay hands on Panda's mother. This sudden news sent Panda into a frenzy. He jerked his head up, letting out a beastly roar. Then, at incredible speed, he charged outside. This stunned every animal present, including you. Although Panda had disrupted your plan, the timing was about right. So, at your urging, Wong Kili gritted her teeth, and with her short little legs, followed after him. Meanwhile, Panda was racing down the street, as if entering some strange state. After hearing the news about his mother, for some reason, he felt a surge of bloodlust. Under Panda's frantic sprint, in no time at all, he reached the Lion Pride stronghold. Then he started fighting with several lions. For a moment, he was unstoppable. Panda didn't know what was wrong with him, but he felt his body was filled with endless power. He used to be terrified of lions, but now, facing them, what stirred in his heart wasn't fear, but excitement. With a loud bang, a lion trying to ambush him was smacked by Panda, seeing stars. But before he could savor the moment, a piercing roar rang out. It was the Lion King, who had rushed over upon hearing the commotion. And at that moment, his mind was in turmoil. He recognized this Panda. It was Panda, who had fled Bahai City a few days ago, but he had sent men to capture him. So why was he here? And how had he become so strong? Enraged and humiliated, the Lion King immediately ordered his men to seize him. The other lions swarmed forward, launching a frenzied attack on Panda. Facing the onslaught of claws, Panda seemed unusually excited. He didn't choose to defend or flee, because at this moment, there was nowhere to run. As the sound of claws tearing flesh echoed, Panda took the enemy's blows head-on, then swung his fist and slammed it down on the opponent's head. With a sickening crack, the lion's head was crushed by Panda's punch, blood spraying everywhere. The lion was clearly on the verge of death, but before Panda could finish him off, a second attack came, then a third. But every attack that landed on him only left a very shallow wound. Although it looked terrifying, for a thick-skinned panda like him, it was at most a flesh wound. But every scar on his body could be traded for a crisp hunting beast. However, as more and more animals attacked, Panda's counterattacks began to slow down. During one counterattack, his rhythm was clearly half a beat off, and the lion behind him seized the moment, swarming in to completely subdue him. Panda, pinned to the ground, showed deep despair in his eyes. If he could have kept up that state, he wouldn't have been subdued so quickly. But somehow, that strange state vanished completely in the midst of his frantic battle. At that moment, the Lion King scanned the area, looking at over a dozen lions clearly beyond saving, which made him wince with pain. The Lion King had someone bring Panda's mother, and decided to kill her in front of Panda to vent his hatred. Seeing her son covered in wounds on the ground, his mother's tears instantly broke free. Panda tried to say something, but at a signal from the Lion King's eyes, a lion pinning him down directly covered his mouth. Then the Lion King raised his claws toward Panda's mother, but just at that critical moment, a earth-shattering dragon roar suddenly exploded in the Lion King's mind. Then, a terrifying pressure descended from the sky, instantly knocking out all the lions present. The Lion King staggered and fell heavily to the ground. He endured the immense pressure, desperately searching for the source of the change. Finally, he locked onto a massive alligator turtle, and the source of that terrifying pressure was the egg on the turtle's back. Because of the frantic running, Wong Kili was now completely out of breath, collapsing weakly beside Panda. Seeing them actually start chatting, the Lion King sensed trouble and immediately tried to get up and flee. But as soon as he moved, his head felt like it was pierced by countless steel needles, sending bone-deep pain through him. And you couldn't help but be surprised. Just now, seeing that guy about to attack Panda's mother, you struck first, so you immediately unleashed the Dragon Roar Array and used a full 500 points of Che at once. Although it stung a bit, the result was very satisfying. Dozens of lions on the scene, all passed out from that one move. Then, afraid of any slip-ups, you directly released the maximum level of dragon might. But what you didn't expect was that under these conditions, the Lion King could still move. Meanwhile, in his mind, a storm was raging. This sudden turtle and egg displayed such ridiculous strength. He was absolutely unbeatable in Bahai City. Yet in just one encounter, he was severely wounded by them. At that moment, the Lion King struggled to lift his head, asking you what you wanted. So you directly stated you needed evolution points, and the entire Bahai City. Upon hearing this, the Lion King immediately agreed, and even offered to become your servant, as long as you spared his life. Soon, the system chimed with a notification. You were completely shocked. This was way too insane. Since robbing the Black Dog King last time, you hadn't felt this overnight-rich sensation in a long time. So you suppressed your excitement, and used all the evolution points to speed up your hatching time. Watching your hatching time shrink, you almost screamed with joy. Just one trip to Bahai City was already worth more than staying in Shanghai. Over half a month's progress. And just as you're getting excited, you are suddenly interrupted by the Lion King's screams. It turns out Panda is sitting on top of him, hitting him with both fists. Every punch lands solidly, beating the Lion King until he screams non-stop. This bloody scene even makes Wong Kili unable to watch. But just then, a piercing sound effect suddenly rings out. In the cloudless sky, a pitch-black fly appears. He seems to have noticed them, and dives toward them at incredible speed. Compared to land animals, becoming a bird does give you a lot more freedom. So before the animal transformation came, quite a few humans chose to escape the city's constraints this way. But birds' attack and defense are clearly much weaker than land animals, yet they have their own strengths, like unmatched speed and agility, and the natural advantage of ignoring terrain. But right now, you don't envy them at all. After all, one day you'll transform into a divine dragon, soaring freely between heaven and earth. Right then, the fly in the sky is staring intently at Wong Kili. His instinct tells him this is something valuable. Just as his claws are about to strike, a thunderous, earth-shaking dragon roar suddenly explodes in his mind. The diving fly is struck as if by lightning, and with a thud, he falls straight to the ground. Wong Kili, carrying something that fell from the sky, almost jumps in fright. After he calms down, he walks over to the fly in a few steps, and directly pins his neck down. No matter how much he struggles, he can't break free from Wong Kili's claws. After some forced interrogation, you finally learn that the fly is a messenger from Yushan City. He came under the orders of the Blue Eagle King to invite the Lion King to plan a great conquest. But upon seeing the Lion King lying on the ground like a dead dog, the fly immediately falls into deep thought. Is this still the mighty, domineering, golden Lion King who ruled alone? And just as you're figuring out what to do with the fly, a dense chorus of roars comes from not far away. Then you see all kinds of fierce carnivores and massive herbivores crowding in through the entrance. But when they see the lions lying all over the ground, they all show shocked expressions. But just then, a pitch-black figure steps out from among them. You immediately recognize him. It's Panting, who came back to report this morning, because Panda suddenly went berserk. Panting is naturally very worried. Although he already acknowledges your strength, he still fears something might go wrong. So he thought of a roundabout way to help, because the city has many hunting groups like them, made up of carnivores who hunt outside the city. They've long been oppressed by the lion pride, but never dared to resist. But now things are different, because you've appeared as a variable. So under his orders, his underlings started spreading the word, spreading your deeds throughout the city. And the goal is simple, to invite them all to unite, and help you fight against the lion pride, then overthrow their brutal rule. But little did he know, this move would cause an uproar in no time. The hunting groups who had long resented the lions, upon hearing the news, quickly agreed to the request. Even some of the large herbivores living in the city came upon hearing the news and joined the ranks. So this rebel army, made up of nearly half the animals in the city, charged into this neighborhood in full force. But to their surprise, they saw this scene as soon as they entered. After learning the whole story, it instantly leaves you speechless. When these animals first rushed in, you almost thought they were the lion pride's reinforcements. If Panting hadn't shown up in time, you would have dropped a thunderous barrier on them. As time passed into the evening, with all the lion pride's top leaders defeated, the entire Bahai city underwent a complete transformation. Without the ruler's restraints, the city was now filled with cheers everywhere. And at Wang Kili's home, a large number of animals had gathered. These animals were all, without exception, like Panting, leaders commanding numerous carnivores. With so many representative animals appearing at once, the purpose was naturally for tonight to confirm the Demon Sea as the new ruler. But in truth, these animals were just going through the motions, because with your own strength alone, you had completely suppressed the lion pride. Such unparalleled strategy left them with no trace of rebellious thought. Without you even needing to speak, the animals directly acclaimed you as the new ruler of the Demon Sea. So you immediately announced several changes that needed to be made in the city. First, abolish the survival game. Although farming evolution points through this method was indeed highly efficient, you really didn't want to do something so ruthless and merciless. You see, just hatching required a full 1 million evolution points. And that wasn't even your final goal. Once you hatched, the evolution points needed would likely increase dramatically. So you had to consider the future. Then you also decreed that from now on, the entire city's rules and regulations for collecting evolution points would be largely identical to those in Haishang City. However, the tradition of carnivores going out of the city to hunt together, that tradition you chose to keep, and you significantly reduced the evolution points they had to turn in. This nearly made the hunting captains present cry from excitement. Afterwards, you and Wang Kili went to where the fly was imprisoned, planning to ask him about the specific situation in Yushan City. But you were shocked to find that he had vanished without a trace. Remember, this was the third floor underground. Forget windows. Even the entrance was just the iron door you had opened. But as you were puzzling over it, the iron door, which had just been casually shut, let out a creaking sound. It inexplicably opened a crack. Seeing this, you immediately unleashed your dragon's might, which forced the invisible fly to reveal himself. He was now flapping his wings desperately, but suppressed by your dragon's might, he couldn't fly up no matter how hard he tried. And upon spotting the fly, Wang Kili instantly pinned him to the ground. This made the fly feel worse than death. He never imagined that after finally activating his special ability, and even fooling you, he would be defeated by a rusty iron door. At this point, you became even more curious about this eagle. Just a messenger, yet he could use such a bizarre invisibility ability. So the Blue Eagle King he mentioned earlier, what kind of figure would he be? Surely a figure like that must have a lot of evolution points on him. Then, under the Fly Messenger's account, you quickly got the information you wanted. It turned out the Blue Eagle King was a tyrant in Yushan City, and the Fly had come this time to invite the Lion King to form an alliance so they could conquer the world together. One would rule the sky, the other would dominate the land. Hearing this, you immediately said the Lion King had been deposed, but that you could go in his place to discuss it. The Fly was kicking himself. If he really brought this plague back with him, the Blue Eagle King would probably be done for. Although staying in Bahai City to collect evolution points was safer, you still preferred to go out and explore. You had only come to Bahai City once, and it already matched what you had in Haishang City. After more than half a month of incubation, if I make a trip to Yue Mountain City, which is even bigger than Bahai City, how many evolution points would I gain? And you also want to go see this Blue Eagle King, who took only 2 months to seize control of the entire Sichuan province, and see what extraordinary abilities he has. So, over the next few days, you performed Dragon Soul contracts on both Lion King and Fly, and had Panda take over managing the Demon Sea division in your place. Meanwhile, Wang Qili decided to return to Shanghai City to help you guard the home base. 3 days later, you sat inside the wooden box on Fly's back. With a single command, he shot straight up from the ground, soaring into the clouds and speeding toward Yue Mountain City. Yue Mountain City is about 3,000 kilometers from the high city. With Fly's current speed of nearly 400 kilometers per hour, you'll reach the destination by tomorrow. So, when night fell the next day, you successfully arrived at Yue Mountain City and landed on a towering tree. You were resting with your eyes closed inside the dragon egg when you suddenly thought it had been a long time since you'd added any new talents. Although you were very confident in your strength, you had a vague feeling that this mission to Yue Mountain City wouldn't be so simple. If the Blue Eagle King's strength was really as Fly described, then he would definitely become the most powerful enemy you had ever faced so far. Thinking of this, you decided to act immediately, so you directly contacted the system and issued the command to draw a talent. After all, 4,000.07 was nothing to you now. Just 1 day's income from Demon Sea City. As the spinning wheel's pointer slowly came to a stop, a prompt tone soon sounded in your ear. After getting the new talent, you were initially very excited, but upon hearing the system's warning, your expression instantly turned sour. This was such a rip-off. If using this talent came with severe side effects, wouldn't that be a waste of 4,007 points? Fortunately, after the system explained, you understood the specific reason. It turned out that dragon essence is a powerful energy inherent in all dragons from birth, and it's crucial for incubation. If overdrawn excessively, the dragon essence in your body would enter a weakened state and could even affect the strength of the hatchling. Given the amount of dragon essence you currently have, using the divine dragon breath before hatching should not exceed 5 times, but you are already satisfied. After all, just from the description, this talent already seemed incredibly overpowered, and it's even called a rare talent, so it definitely wasn't ordinary. However, using it once costs 1,000.0 cha. Only an idiot would use it for fun every day. Then, feeling content, you were about to close your eyes and fall asleep, when suddenly something happened. Strange bird calls suddenly erupted from not far away, causing all sorts of animals in the jungle to panic and scatter. Seeing this, you spread out your divine sense, and then discovered that all around you, countless birds had gathered, a dark, overwhelming mass, numbering at least several thousand. As you were pondering, a wave of birds made the first move, and their target was you. Seeing that they were hostile, you naturally wouldn't just sit and wait. Then, a terrifying dragon aura was released in an instant. In the blink of an eye, it completely overwhelmed those birds. The moment their bodies touched the dragon aura, it was as if they were struck by lightning, and they all fell to the ground. But that wasn't the end. After the first wave of birds fell, a second wave charged forward without any hesitation. With wave after wave of attacks, it's starting to get under your skin. You've already used Dragon's Might and Dragon's Roar Array, but these birds are still acting like they're insane, relentlessly charging at you. So you had no choice but to toss out a few heavenly thunder shields, letting them taste what it's like to be scorched. Listening to the system prompts in your mind, you're absolutely thrilled at this moment. Just from that last wave, you managed to gain over 20,000 evolution points. Truly, only slaughter is the fastest way to earn evolution points. But just as you're getting excited, you sense another wave flying in from the distance. A huge flock of birds. However, this time their aura is clearly much stronger than the previous ones. Just as you're about to throw out more heavenly thunder shields, the fly beneath you speaks up. He hopes you'll show some mercy. It turns out these birds are all Blue Eagle King's minions. Among them, he sensed the presence of his own brother. If it were any other minions coming, the fly wouldn't bother struggling. After all, he can barely save himself right now. But these are his former family, so there's no way he can stand by and do nothing. Seeing this, you decide to watch and see what these guys are really up to. As soon as the two sides make contact, the fly's brother, Fifth Guardian, starts laying into the fly fiercely, accusing him of betraying his trust and turning his back on the Blue Eagle King. This leaves the fly unable to defend himself. Then the Fifth Guardian turns his gaze to you, asking if you've come to attend the grand tournament. But his tone this time is unusually respectful, because from the earlier skirmish, he knows your strength is terrifying. At this moment, you can also sense that these birds are clearly different from the ones before. Although their auras are much stronger, they don't show any hint of hostility. Instead, they put on a respectful demeanor. Right now, outside the suburbs of Yue Mountain City, there stands a massive ancient palace. The Blue Eagle King is resting with his eyes closed, as if waiting for something. But just then, one of the guardians behind him flies out and quickly announces the names of those arriving. The mighty Bear King of Songjiang City has arrived. The Kangvolf King of Qingzhou City has arrived. The Dragonhound King of Zhangao City has arrived. The Serpent King of 10,000 Snakes has arrived. The Unicorn King of Zhenshan City has arrived. Then, every so often, another overlord-level figure appears. If this were before the animal transformation, such a scene would have been absolutely impossible. But now, these ferocious animals have all gathered together, and in an extremely harmonious atmosphere. So, under the coordination of the host, the Blue Eagle King, they chat with each other very enthusiastically. But just then, the animals seem to sense something unusual, and they all turn their heads to look outside the palace. Then they hear a powerful name, Dragon Nest. The Dragon Nest Holy Lord. At this moment, the sky is pitch black, filled with all kinds of birds. This sudden voice immediately sparks discussion among the animals, but their first thought is of dinosaurs. After all, throughout all of human history, the only things that could be associated with dragons are dinosaurs. And as for these animals, although they're now at the top of the food chain, if they had to compare themselves to dinosaurs, those prehistoric creatures, they'd probably only be good as food. As for the legendary dragon that can ride the clouds, summon wind and rain, they wouldn't even dare to think about it. But when they follow the sound and look, all they see is a dark mass of birds. No sign of any dinosaurs. It's more like a bird's nest than a dragon's nest. After realizing there are no dinosaurs, the animals all breathe a sigh of relief and start mocking the sky. As the flock of birds disperses, you're arranged to sit at a seat in the corner. It's only then that the animals finally understand. It turned out that the wooden box on the fly's back contained the so-called Sacred Lord. Meanwhile, over with the 5 guardians, he had already told Blue Eagle King all of your information. After learning about your terrifying strength, shockwaves surged through his heart. Then a glimmer of cunning flashed in his eyes, clearly up to no good. But at that moment, you discovered something truly shocking. When you first arrived at the palace, you felt strangely unsettled. You knew that this inexplicable feeling had only appeared once before, when the Earths will descended for the second time. And now it was happening again. Did this mean the Earth's will was about to descend once more? As the grand tournament officially began, Blue Eagle King personally stepped up to host the proceedings. He first analyzed the current situation and talked about plans to establish a new order and so on. The reason he went through all this trouble to gather these top-tier animal overlords together was to form a powerful land alliance so they could dominate the entire Grand Canyon together. But before that, they needed to elect a land alliance leader. Among them, most animals supported deciding by strength. So, at Blue Eagle King's command, a space in the square was cleared out, specifically for everyone to compete. The rules were simple. Victory decided in 3 moves, with no killing intent. First up was Dragon Dog King. He won 7 matches in a row, but ultimately lost by a very narrow margin to Grave Wolf King. After more than a dozen rounds of competition, standing in the center of the arena was the most powerful one of all, Mighty Bear King. There's no denying it. His special ability was truly astonishing. His entire body turned bright red, and raging flames blazed around him, making him look like a war god descending to the mortal world. In just a few dozen minutes, over a dozen animals had fallen to him. Now only Unicorn King and the Dragon Egg's mother hadn't fought him yet. If he could defeat you too, he would naturally become the alliance leader, the top land animal in the Great Xia Kingdom. But just as Unicorn King was about to step up, and Mighty Bear King was ready to fight, you hurriedly said you had something to take care of, and had to leave. Hearing you say you wanted to leave at a time like this, the animals in the arena instantly erupted. They all thought you were chickening out, so they swarmed around you and the fly. After all the fighting just now, these animals were burning with battle lust. They were itching for a fight, and they saw you as their punching bag. Then, colorful energy began flashing everywhere. Dozens of special abilities were activated in an instant, raining down on you from all directions. In just moments, they sealed off every escape route. You were already agitated and distracted, so you had no time to waste bickering with these animals. You directly unleashed the Farmer's Roar. Instantly, an invisible soul attack surged like a tidal wave, sweeping across the entire square. In a flash, a heaven-shaking dragon's roar exploded in the minds of the animals. They immediately collapsed, their faces twisted in pain. This bizarre scene made the other animal leaders stare at you in shock and awe. At the same time, they felt incredibly relieved that they hadn't rashly attacked. Otherwise, they would have ended up just like those guys. But the underlings instantly went berserk. They weren't like their leaders. They hadn't realized how strange you were right away. All they knew was that their boss had been taken down, so no matter who you were, they had to charge in and fight you. Seeing this, you just sneered dismissively. In the blink of an eye, over a dozen millstone-sized red six-pointed star formations materialized in midair. Orange red flames spewed out from them, engulfing most of the arena. Then, blood-curdling screams echoed across the square, one after another. It wasn't the constant alert sounds in his mind. You looked up at the Blue Eagle King in midair. At that moment, his wings had already lit up with an eerie green glow. And high above in the sky, a massive energy shield appeared, completely enveloping the entire square. So, when you first fought those leaders, it could be said they had it coming. Besides, you didn't take their lives. But just now, you slaughtered all their underlings on the Blue Eagle King's turf. Killing so many animals so blatantly had already angered him. At this moment, you focused all your attention on the energy shield in the sky. Your instincts were not wrong. The Blue Eagle King could rally so many Overlord-level animals because he truly had the strength to back it up. Just that energy shield in the sky alone was enough to prove that this guy was far stronger than all the other leaders present. And not just by a little bit. You see, the special abilities other animals awakened mostly just gave them a temporary stat boost, or mainly enhanced certain parts of their bodies. The stronger ones, like those leaders who attacked you just now, besides activating abilities and enhancing organs, also had powerful special abilities that could be released outside their bodies. But someone like the Blue Eagle King, who could release such a huge energy shield, was truly one of a kind. At that moment, the Blue Eagle King looked at the bodies on the ground and said you had to give him an explanation and hand over all the evolution points on you, or else you wouldn't be leaving easily. His words carried an penetrating force. Even though his voice was very soft, it came with a buzzing sound. You could clearly feel a very faint dizziness wash over you, but it didn't last even a second before it completely dissipated. You see, your soul at this moment was the most noble dragon soul. If you hadn't hatched yet, then with this level of soul attack, there's no way it could shake you at all. At this moment, you said to the Blue Eagle King with ease, "If you don't accept it, come fight. If you don't accept it, come fight." Watching the animals below frown deeply, all looking pained, while your voice was full of confidence, as if you were completely unaffected. This sent shockwaves through the Blue Eagle King's heart, because the time since the animal apocalypse began was still short. Most animals turned from humans hadn't had time to use gene points to strengthen their souls. So before, this move of his, at critical moments, always worked wonders. But this time, the Blue Eagle King was truly panicking. He chose to confront you now, because he noticed you had just used a soul attack. And every time he used a soul attack himself, he would fall into a brief period of weakness. So the Blue Eagle King thought you were the same, and decided to take a gamble. But it turned out he gambled wrong, because what you released wasn't a special ability at all, but a talent. As things stand now, as long as you have enough spiritual energy inside you, your released talents have no cooldown at all. As for the Blue Eagle King's overconfident soul attack, before your powerful dragon soul, it was nothing but a joke. And at this moment, the Blue Eagle King's sharp eyes were fixed on you, his face full of disbelief. Then, he seemed to think of something, and quickly shifted his gaze to the other animals. Then he said your strength was terrifying, and suggested that since everyone was together now, they should join forces to eliminate you. Otherwise, once you grew stronger, there would be no place left for them. At this moment, the Blue Eagle King roared hysterically, placing all his hopes on the animals who hadn't attacked you just now. After all, the ones who attacked you are still lying on the ground. Their breaths are weak, but they're all still alive, because the leaders of these animals have all activated several special abilities. And every time a special ability is activated, what it brings them isn't just a powerful skill, but also a body that's been strengthened twofold. At this point, Blue Eagle King was desperate, betting that you no longer had the strength to kill the remaining animal leaders. But you just chuckled dismissively. Earlier, you had only used a Dragon Roar Array with 500.07 power. The reason you held back and didn't kill them was simply because you wanted to brand them all with a Dragon Soul contract. You were originally in a hurry to leave, but after Blue Eagle King said those words, you weren't so eager anymore, because you also wanted to see what choices the remaining animals who hadn't attacked would make. Just as you were getting interested, you inexplicably heard several sounds like chains breaking in your mind, and at the same time, your heart began to grow uneasy. Meanwhile, under Blue Eagle King's instigation, a few more animals ultimately chose to stand against you. But just as they were about to attack you, your dragon might was unleashed without any restraint in an instant. At that moment, you were extremely anxious, even carrying a hint of anger. So, in a flash, you unleashed the divine dragon's breath with full force. A gray gas immediately swept across the entire square. This shocked all the animals present, because they could clearly feel the immense energy contained within that gas. With a sizzling sound, the space in the square seemed to freeze. Everything turned black and white. Then, blinding white light spread out in all directions with lightning speed. All the animals present, filled with fear, vanished into the blinding rays of light. But 3 seconds later, a beam of light over 5 meters in diameter, carrying terrifying heat, shot out from the center of the square. Instantly, it pierced through the energy shield Blue Eagle King had created, landing directly on the distant palace complex. After the white light faded, a mushroom cloud dozens of meters high appeared not far away. Then, feeling a bit weak, you took the chance to command the fly to fly off into the distance. It wasn't until several hours later that surviving animals slowly began to get up, and the first to rise was none other than the strongest Blue Eagle King. As the host, he was now utterly disheveled. That once gleaming set of blue feathers was now mostly scorched and blackened. Looking at the other surviving animals, their condition wasn't much better. Meanwhile, tens of thousands of feet up in the sky, you were constantly urging the fly to speed toward the direction of Haisheng City. The reason you were in such a rush was because of those cracking sounds that had suddenly echoed in your mind back in the square. The Dragon Soul contract is your talent for binding slaves. From the moment you got it until now, you've used it on many animals. Once the contract is complete, no matter the distance, a special connection forms between you and your slave. Those cracking sounds you heard meant you had lost that connection with some animals. But the Dragon Soul contract is overwhelmingly powerful. Aside from you, no animal can break it on their own. So, if this happened, there could only be one explanation. The animals you had contracted were dead, and the ones you lost connection with were all from Haisheng City. Back when you were hoarding evolution, you had stayed there for a month. During that month, every mutated animal that appeared in the city had been branded with your Dragon Soul contract. But now, their auras have all completely vanished. That's why you suddenly got so anxious to rush back to Seaside City to see what exactly happened. After all, when you first left, you never expected that Earth would undergo a second descent, triggering a massive rise of animals. Under these circumstances, the combat power in Seaside City seemed barely sufficient. Even with Wang Kili returning a few days earlier, the result would be the same, because those auras all vanished. In an instant, to achieve that level, the animals attacking Seaside City must be incredibly powerful. After a full night of continuous flight, you finally entered Seaside City's territory. But just at that moment, a very familiar figure hurriedly appeared within your divine sense range, so you ordered Fly to immediately stop him. This figure was none other than Husky, the former strategist of the vicious dog gang. The moment he saw you, he nearly cried from excitement. As he told his story, you finally understood what had happened in Seaside City. It turned out that yesterday, several powerful armored tigers invaded Seaside City. So Black Dog King and the others got into a fierce fight with these tigers. But because the tigers were too strong, they suffered heavy losses. Luckily, Wang Kili had returned to Seaside City a day earlier. Otherwise, the consequences would have been disastrous. Even now, Wang Kili is still locked in a standoff with those tigers, and Husky sneaked out on Wang Kili's orders to go to Bahai City and ask Panda for reinforcements. After all, there are still strong fighters like Lion King there, which should be enough to handle these tigers. And as luck would have it, those tigers were exactly the ones that Black Dog King, Cat Boss, and Rat King had teamed up to drive out before, back when the animal transformation first descended. The city's factions, to prevent them from growing up and taking over, joined forces and drove them out of the city when they were still young, leaving them to fend for themselves in the wild. But they never expected that these tigers all managed to survive in the harsh wilderness, and after Earth's second descent, they all awakened incredibly powerful special abilities. As it turns out, Black Dog King and the others were too merciful back then. It was a classic case of letting the tiger go back to the mountain. Now that they've grown up, there's no way they'll show any mercy to the animals in Seaside City who once bullied them. Since you couldn't take Husky with you, you had to point out a relatively safe route to Bahai City for him. It was a path he and Wang Kili had traveled before, so it would be somewhat safer. Then Fly took off again, speeding towards Seaside City. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the city gate. Wang Kili and Black Dog King, leading a few dogs, were locked in battle with several tigers. Though they were trading blows, defeat was only a matter of time, as time ticked by minute. Eventually, Black Dog King and the other animals were caught off guard by the tigers and knocked to the ground. Only Wang Kili was still struggling to hold on. But even to fists can't beat four hands. Several steel like tiger paws, carrying terrifying destructive force, slammed down hard, instantly leaving deep gashes on his hard turtle shell. With a heart-wrenching scream, Wong Kili passed out from the pain. And you witnessed this scene just as you returned. So a furious dragon roar suddenly exploded in the minds of those tigers. Without even a struggle, they completely lost consciousness. At that moment, you were filled with regret. You saw from afar Wong Kili being attacked by the tigers. But because the attack range wasn't enough, in the end, it was still too late. Seeing your brother lying motionless on the ground, you let out an enraged roar. So you immediately asked the system if there was any way to save him. However, the system only gave two answers. First, use the talent wheel to obtain Spring Breeze. This talent can 100% heal Wong Kili's injuries. The second option is to fuse a drop of divine dragon's blood into Wong Kili. This way, he would gain the dragon clan's bloodline. Then, relying on the dragon's powerful physique, he would only need a few days of rest to fully recover. After some comparison, you directly chose the second method. Drawing a talent next time would cost a full 8,000 points, and the next time after that, it would double. Even if you used all your assets, you might not be able to draw that talent. Anyway, the system also said that although Wong Kili's breath was very weak, with his strong physique, as long as he received treatment within a month, there wouldn't be any major problems. And that day, at Blue Eagle King Square, you killed countless animals in one go. Plus, Black Dog King had just delivered nearly a month's worth of stored purification points. It just reached over 600,000, so you used all those evolution points to speed up the incubation time by 6,000 years. Then, a system prompt sounded in your ear. Congratulations, host! You have completed the 10,000-year incubation period, now entering the hatching state. At that moment, you felt as if you had left the dragon egg and arrived in another space, and around you were dozens of dragon streams. But just as you were in shock, you suddenly let out a heart-wrenching scream. It turned out that, without warning, a dragon stream had directly drilled into your body. The immense energy instantly raged wildly inside you. The intense pain nearly made you pass out. No one knows how long it lasted, but that maddening feeling finally began to slowly fade away. But right after, a second dragon stream also drilled into your body. This made you let out another agonized scream. Meanwhile, in the villa district of Bahai City, Panda, now turned into a panda, was sitting on the sofa, furious. It turned out that after you left, at first, those hunting team leaders were relatively obedient, handing in their evolution points every day without fail. But as time slowly passed, they seemed to have forgotten the fear you once brought them. A few restless ones started to dip their hands into the daily evolution points they were supposed to hand in. At first, it was just a few individuals, so Panda didn't pay much attention. After all, Bahai City had just stabilized, and it wasn't suitable for another upheaval so soon. But ever since those restless ones used the stolen evolution points to activate special abilities, their courage grew bolder and bolder. Not only did the daily evolution points they handed in get fewer, but even the originally obedient team leaders, after seeing the benefits, also started to imitate them. This behavior made Panda furious, so he called over his cousin, Panting, who had turned into a black leopard, to discuss how to deal with those people. However, just at that moment, a few hounds ran in terrified to report that many unknown creatures had suddenly appeared outside. So, upon hearing this, the first thing Panda did was go to the city wall to check. There, on the ground and in the sky outside the city, there were swarms of animals everywhere, darkening the sky. All kinds of birds and beasts, some seen before, some never seen. Although they were still some distance from Mohai City, the overwhelming pressure from that massive force still left him stunned in place. Since the animal transformation descended, tidal invasions of cities had been common, but one on such a massive scale, Panda had never seen before. He was about to send a few hounds, hurry and notify the city guards. But before he could say a word, Panting interrupted him from the side. With his extensive experience, he spotted the problem at a glance. Because ordinary flooding wouldn't cause such a neat, orderly march, so these animals were more like a disciplined army. So, Panda quickly realized the seriousness of the situation. If this were just ordinary flooding, there wouldn't be any need for such alarm. After all, wild animals have uneven fighting abilities and very poor team awareness. No matter how many of them there are, they're just a bunch of headless flies. As long as they properly use their own advantages, they can barely cope. But if the enemy is from another city, sent to attack Bahai City, then the situation is completely different. Because in the face of such a well-organized and commanded massive army, Bahai City's advantages would vanish, And now, at this moment of life and death, under Panda's command, the entire Bahai City sprang into action. Soon, at every entrance to the city, a large number of powerful animals emerged. They stood ready, raising their alertness to the highest level. Meanwhile, in the streets and alleys of the city, those large, thick-skinned herbivores also moved at the same time, rushing toward the city's outskirts. So, within just a few minutes, the entire Bahai City entered a state of combat readiness. This is a trait wild animals lack. In the face of such a life-or-death crisis, city animals can often show an incredible sense of unity at critical moments. Watching the hunting squad leaders behind him, now in position, Panda nodded to himself. Good thing these guys aren't completely rotten to the core. Sure, they like to pocket evolution points, but when it comes to a big issue like this, they can still tell what's important. After a brief pre-battle speech, Panda and the squad leaders stood on the city wall, silently waiting for the storm to arrive. They had done everything they could. The rest was up to fate. As the enemy drew closer, all kinds of chaotic animal calls rang out. In the pitch-black night, tens of thousands of animals had reached the edge of Bahai City. But just as the dense army was about to advance further, several earth-shaking, furious roars sounded at the same time. From a valley in Bahai City, hundreds of majestic figures suddenly burst out. Their roars were piercing, like the howls of demons, and they actually made the army of tens of thousands freeze in place out of fear. These sudden cavalry were none other than Lion King and his subordinates. Because they had committed so many crimes in Bahai City, they simply couldn't stay inside the city. So after you branded them with the Dragon Soul contract, they were stationed on the outskirts of Bahai City. When there was nothing going on, they hunted wild animals in the field. And when Bahai City was in crisis, they immediately became Panda's hunters. This was the trump card you left for Panda. But just then, an arrogant voice came from the enemy camp. I was wondering who it was. Isn't this the former Golden Lion who ruled Bahai City? How come you become someone else's guard dog now? The one who said this was none other than Blue Eagle King, whom you had injured a few days ago. But in response to his taunt, Lion King wasn't angry. Instead, he stated sternly, "Whoever you are, retreat within 10 minutes, or it's death without mercy." Although Lion King had been branded with the Dragon Soul contract and become Panda's slave, at this moment, he still exuded an overwhelmingly domineering aura. After days of roughing it in the wild, he had gradually become wild himself. He believed in the truth of killing above all else. If not for the Dragon Soul contract in his mind holding him back, he would have long been lost in endless slaughter. The Lion King's words seemed to work quite well. The massive, dark army of animals, after hearing those two sentences from him, indeed stopped advancing. But they didn't start retreating either. Instead, they stayed put, facing off in a standoff. At that moment, Panda, on the city wall, naturally saw everything happening below clearly. So he led the few mutated animals he had, and came behind the lion pride, ready to respond to any sudden situation. But just then, the Blue Eagle King's arrogant voice rang out again. He said he could retreat, but they had to hand over the Sacred Lord. However, upon hearing this, Panda immediately became alert. He naturally knew that the Sacred Lord these guys were talking about was you. But weren't you supposed to have gone to Mount Yue City with the fly? Could something have happened to you? But after just a brief moment of thought, Panda immediately dismissed that foolish idea. With your heaven-defying strength, you were practically invincible in this world. After all, the Lion King not far away. Since he was still following his own fate, that meant this guy was still under your control. Having figured this out, Panda made a decision in his heart. No matter where you were right now, he just had to protect Demon Sea City. But then the Blue Eagle King issued an ultimatum. He said he would give Panda and the others 1 minute to think it over. If they still didn't give a definite answer, then he would launch an attack directly. Who would have thought Panda, without a word, directly activated his special ability? That suddenly wild aura swept out in all directions. He used his actions to show his stance. And at the same time, beside Panda, several hunting team leaders and the Lion Pride, seeing that Panda had already made his stance clear, naturally couldn't afford to lose momentum. So dozens of powerful auras erupted all at once. Seeing that Panda wouldn't compromise, the Blue Eagle King directly ordered the attack. Then the dark, massive army of animals charged toward Demon Sea City. Under the stampede of so many animals, the ground itself began to tremble. At that moment, hundreds of lions roared in unison, instantly drowning out the enemy's charge. In this first intangible clash, Bahai City had the upper hand. Naturally, morale soared instantly. But just as the two sides were about to meet, and the great battle was about to erupt, a thunderous roar that shook heaven and earth suddenly exploded in the distant sky. This sudden change left the charging animals, all frozen in place. They all looked up toward the distance. There, in the direction of Sea Rise City, the pitch-black sky had actually appeared with multicolored lights. Even from Bahai City, 100 miles away, it could be seen clearly. And this strange sight was exactly the result of your hatching. Right now, you, in midair, were wrapped in a huge golden light orb, but you could clearly see that your body had already turned into the form of a divine dragon, although it was only about a dozen meters long, like a mini version of a divine dragon. Even so, for the animals of this world, it was still a colossal being. But for now, you were probably in your infancy. Once you grew up, your size would definitely become even larger. Just as you were getting excited, a system prompt sounded in your mind. Congratulations, host, on successfully hatching and obtaining the talent honor of the 9 heavens. Obtain talent Inside Eye. Reward, 3 lottery spins. The honor of the 9 heavens is the Divine Dragon Clan. They are born with the ability to ride clouds and mist. It is automatically awakened after hatching. This talent consumes 1.07 per minute. And the Inside Eye can view information about mutated animals. This talent is a passive talent. It requires no consumption. Listening to the series of system prompts, you are very satisfied. But what puzzles you is, since Dragon Jade 9 Heavens is a passive talent, why does it need to consume spiritual energy? After the system's explanation, you finally understood the cause of the matter. It turns out that Dragon Jade 9 Heavens is an innate ability of the Dragon Clan. It doesn't require spiritual energy by itself, but because the spiritual energy in your plane is thin, it's not enough to support the use of this talent, so it needs to consume extra spiritual energy. After learning the whole story, you opened the talent wheel again. The system just rewarded you with 3 draw chances, so you decided to take a shot first, to test your luck. Congratulations, host, on completing the talent draw. You have obtained a new talent, Spring Breeze. This talent can release the vast life force within the Dragon Clan, forming a small-scale healing field. Using it requires consuming 1007. When the introduction panel for the new talent appeared before your eyes, you were instantly stunned. Wasn't this the talent you wanted to use to heal Wong Kili back then? You never thought that just after hatching, you would draw it in one go. Truly, fate plays tricks on people. Meanwhile, outside the city of Heishi, it was already surrounded by countless animals. They all saw the strange phenomenon in the sky, and were drawn to this place. Originally, with that irresistible allure, they should have swarmed in, and charged straight into Heishi. But they did not. The reason was the golden orb, floating in midair. From there, they sensed an extremely powerful aura. Whenever they tried to approach Heishi, deep in their hearts, a strange fear would surge up, as if, by some unseen force, a voice was telling them that the being inside that golden orb was supreme. They didn't even have the right to get close. If they dared to recklessly enter this area, they would surely face utter destruction. At that moment, Blue Eagle King led his main force, and also arrived at the gates of Heishi. He looked at the golden orb in the sky, and immediately frowned. That day, after you unleashed the divine dragon's breath in the square, they were all terrified to the extreme. They had silently resolved in their hearts to mark you as someone absolutely not to be provoked. But later, when Blue Eagle King was cleaning up the aftermath, he discovered that his entire family had all died in that catastrophe, because the center of the explosion was right where his family lived. Those who knew him well knew that his family was his soft spot. Whenever something involved his family, no matter how important the subordinate, he never let anyone off, let alone an enemy. So he immediately lost his mind. He conspired with the few animal leaders who had also attacked you to join him in wiping you out. After all, after you unleashed the divine dragon's breath, your aura became very weak. So the animal leaders, after some discussion, agreed with Blue Eagle King's idea. But since they didn't know you had returned to Heishi, they turned their sights on Bahai City. Normally, with Blue Eagle King and his men's speed, they could have arrived in a day. But to wait for these ground animals, they took a full 10+ days to finally reach Bahai City. But before they could even start their attack, this kind of thing happened in the sky. Although they are mutated animals, they have some resistance to that temptation. They still couldn't help but run over. But after seeing the golden orb, the eldest son of the Blue Eagle King regretted it deeply. He had clearly walked right into a trap, because that all too familiar aura in the sky was unmistakably you, kid. Looking at you now, your aura is countless times stronger than before. There's no sign of weakness at all. But now, they can't leave, because they're surrounded by animals. These animals, drawn by the vision, are mostly from the wild. Among them, many auras are already not to be underestimated. These are all animals that have long fought and scraped in the wild. They are extremely fierce. They'll attack at the slightest disagreement. And the Blue Eagle King and his group's position is very awkward. They're right in the middle of these animals. The Blue Eagle King believes that even he might not be able to escape. After all, in that catastrophe you unleashed, he was also seriously injured. So, they're now stuck between a rock and a hard place. But just as he was feeling lost, the colorful lasers in the sky, at some point, vanished without a trace. At the same time, a loud, clear dragon roar suddenly echoed across the sky. An earth-shattering, immense dragon might surged like a tidal wave from the golden orb, sweeping outward. In just an instant, it crashed down onto Haisheng City and all the animals outside the city. For a moment, dazzling golden light blazed across the sky. A divine dragon, thousands of feet long, slowly appeared in the sky. Countless animals, the moment they saw the dragon's phantom, prostrated themselves on the ground, as if in worship. They didn't dare look directly at that divine figure. As the vision gradually faded, only you were left in the sky, completely dumbfounded. Why are so many animals lying on the ground? And what's Panda doing here? Your divine stone, after hatching, can now completely cover all of Haisheng City. Among the countless animals, you also spotted a few familiar figures. It seems that during your incubation, quite a few restless ones have come back. Then, with a slight movement of your body, you appeared right on top of Panda's head.